With its solid fundamental and industrial support, China is known as the 14th most innovative country in the world. This gives it the potential to cultivate world-class innovations which are beyond the developing markets. Their heavy investment in research and development has allowed the country to make rapid developments in science and technology, and recently they have set afloat the idea to make new reusable rockets for their astronauts. First up, China's plan for the reusable rocket. A recent article from Space.com was released about the country's officials planning to use rockets with a reusable first stage to send astronauts and cargo to their new Tiangong space station, the Moon, or even beyond. As of now, it goes by the placeholder name of New Generation Manned Launch Vehicle, which is a bit of a mouthful, but appropriate given the capabilities for which it is being innovated. According to the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, CASC, the rocket in question, other than ferrying astronauts and cargo into space, will also be designed so that it is able to carry a newer and larger spacecraft than the Chinese National Space Administration's rocket, called the Shenzhou, which they use for crewed missions. Supposedly, the smaller version of the rocket will be capable of launching nearly 14,000 kilograms into Earth's low orbit. This will allow it to carry China's next-generation crew-carrying spacecraft, which, according to a separate Space.com article, had an unmanned test flight last year. On the other hand, the rocket's larger counterpart was said to be capable of launching 27,000 kilograms into the lunar transfer orbit, a vastly larger feat, which will allow it to carry a larger, heavier version of the next-generation crew-carrying spacecraft for lunar and deep space missions. What's the progress? Unfortunately, because of China's lack of the necessary technology to develop a reusable rocket with such capacities, the New Generation Manned Launch Vehicle is still unavailable. However, the country's officials have claimed that they are planning the first iteration of the launch of this rocket to happen before 2025 ends. As of yet, Chinese astronauts are using Long March 2F rockets for their crew missions, which are, as per routine, expendable. The name rings a bell since this rocket comes from a long line of Long March rockets, which includes the Long March 5B rocket. Yep, the same one that crashed back to Earth last year because of an uncontrolled entry. As per various accounts and reports, China's launch in 2021 came with a massive chunk falling out of its spacecraft and hitting the Earth. If the Long March 5B rocket would have re-entered the atmosphere about 15 minutes earlier, reports said that the extra mass would have potentially rained down on New York City. This uncontrolled plummet of the Chinese rocket was due to a sudden malfunction after it had spent a week in space. With this in mind, we're keeping our fingers crossed about the success of China's new reusable rocket. How does it work? The New Generation Manned Launch Vehicle is planned to have a two-stage tandem configuration, also known as a two-stage to orbit (TSTO). If you don't know what that is, it's a spacecraft in which two distinct stages provide propulsion consecutively in order for the rocket to achieve orbital velocity. Each step, or stage, is mounted parallel on top of the other and contains its own individual engine. Typically, the first stage and booster engines fire up to propel the entire spacecraft upwards, and when the boosters run out of fuel, a small explosive charge or explosive bolts are used to detach the stage from the rest of the rocket, allowing it to fall away. In the case of the New Generation Manned Launch Vehicle, however, the first stage of the rocket's two-stage tandem configuration can be reused, as it will be able to perform engine deceleration during its re-entry using grid fins for guidance that are very similar to the pioneering Falcon 9 rockets flown by SpaceX. According to the head of China's Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, Wang Xiaojun, the rocket's first stage can also control itself during re-entry using pneumatic rudders. On China's Space Council English website, they've explained how, during its landing, the rocket's first stage will be decelerated after it has done its job. The engine for the launcher will be able to reignite to guide the first stage back towards a landing area and burn once more to make a powered descent and vertical landing, and be secured by a mesh-like recovery system on the ground, which will be a replacement for the usual landing legs. In this way, the rocket will be recovered and reused, reducing launch costs. The system will carry hooks and will be caught by tight wires, allowing a larger number of returning components from the rocket to return to the ground in order to reduce launch vehicle load. Next, propellant and rocket fuel alternatives for the new rocket. At the moment, China uses a toxic and therefore expensive to manage hypergolic propellant to launch its crewed missions with the expendable Long March 2F rocket. The New Generation Manned Launch Vehicle, building on engines developed for China's newer Long March 5, 6, 7, and 8 rockets, will use refined RP-1 kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen to power its engines. A much more refined rocket fuel, which will come come with two variations, a two-stage version for low-orbit missions to the Chinese space station and a three-stage version for their lunar and deep space missions. Now, in other related news, NASA's Artemis 1 moon mission. NASA is taking its first big steps towards returning astronauts to the lunar surface through the Artemis 1 moon mission, previously known as Exploration Mission 1, EM1. This will be the agency's first test flight for the new Space Launch System Mega Rocket and the Orion crew capsule. The Space Launch System rocket will launch the Orion, an uncrewed spacecraft, on a mission for approximately 26 days, out of which it will spend 6 days orbiting the moon before returning to Earth. The test flight is currently scheduled to launch from Launch Complex 39B at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida no earlier than late May 2022. Next, China plans another lunar mission. A set of robotic spacecrafts is being developed by China to land on the moon, along with other countries that are in search of water at the lunar South Pole. Named after the mythological lunar goddess, the Chang'e 7 mission is planned to launch sometime around 2024 to survey the moon from orbit. It will later land at the lunar South Pole to continue exploration. Wu Wei-ren, chief designer of China's lunar exploration program, told China's CCTV during the country's annual political sessions in early March that a major goal is to find water at the South Pole of the moon. He elaborated that there are deep lunar craters at the South Pole, which cover about 10 kilometers, and that if there was water, it could exist in the form of water ice because of scarce sunlight throughout the year. China Daily reported Wu has said engineers are currently developing a special aircraft which will be able to fly or hop to survey nearby craters in search of traces of water ice by detaching from its lander. China National Space Administration's CNSA Lunar Exploration and Space Engineering Center issued a competitive call to Chinese institutes to develop payloads for Chang'e in 2020. This revealed that the mission will consist of 5 spacecraft, an orbiter, a relay satellite, a lander, a rover, and a mini-flying craft that will carry the instrument to detect water. With repeated visits and a possible permanent base among China's plans, built on a series of lunar missions over the past 15 years, the mission is far from being a one-off. In the early 2000s, the country approved a 3-stage lunar program. First, the Chang'e 1 and Chang'e 2 orbiters, followed by landers and rovers with Chang'e 3 and Chang'e 4. In early 2019, the latter made the first ever landing on the lunar far side. Chang'e 5 was the next mission, which completed a complex sample return mission in late 2020. This new round of missions with Chang'e 7 is owed to the success of the last 6 Chang'e missions, which renewed international interest in the moon and encouraged China to follow up with more lunar missions. Lastly, Lockheed Martin to launch new satellite. Later this year, the company, Lockheed Martin, plans to launch a new satellite bus to orbit, which will be designed for both the commercial and government markets. The LM-4000's first launch will serve as a demonstration which will test the spacecraft. Robert Lightfoot, executive vice president of Lockheed Martin, said on March 21st during a lunch meeting with reporters on the sidelines of the Satellite 2022 conference that the company plans to offer the bus as a lower-cost alternative as compared to its traditional bespoke designs. He explained that Lockheed is building a bus that they think will fit a lot of the market segments that are required. Lightfoot said that this venture will be transformational for them, elaborating that the company will be making these buses not exquisite, not a one-off, but as something that can be used for several applications, which will be a part of a common design and common hardware that drives the costs down. That's a wrap for this video. Which one of these upcoming space ventures are you looking forward to hearing more on? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.